first about the Dongsheng Xijiang, the East rising and the West declining. Yes, many people in China believe in this theory. I think actually the reality is more complicated than those four characters. Who is the East, who is the right, the West, what is rise and what is decline. I think this is very, very complicated. But when I say I believe the U.S. is in weakness, not because I'm a believer of Dongsheng Xijiang. Actually, probably to the contrary, I don't think this word is the East is rising. China is rising. I think the U.S. is also rising. The two countries are rising together. So we are moving toward a bipolar. Probably I hate this term, but or bipolar world. So both countries are rising. But I want to emphasize the U.S. is in a relatively difficult situation. Actually, my potential audience are Chinese. I want to let my colleagues and my listeners here in China to understand that the U.S. actually is in a relatively difficult period. So because the widespread belief here in China is, on the one hand, China is rising, but on the other hand, the U.S. is very, very hawkish, very, very rampant, try to keep China down. So we are facing a very hostile external environment. So you have to react to the pressure from the United States. I think if we view this external environment from such a negative perspective, you may react very, very strongly. I think then you make some mistakes. Like the issues that Bonnie mentioned, like Australia and also other other issues in our foreign policy. I think China made those, or Europeans. I think China made those decisions, which I think, we really need to reflect. But I think China made that decision because we believe that these countries are working with the United States together against China, and we have to be firm. We have to be tough. So I think when our understanding towards the external environment is too negative, then you will be very, very hawkish. You will be very, very tough. Your reaction. Then you make some mistakes. So that's the reason why I always explain to my reader and my audience here is that actually, China have a lot of difficulties domestically. I think the U.S. Same. They are facing many, many problems. The U.S. When the U.S. have the summit for democracy, it's not the U.S. united a lot of democratic countries against China. I think actually the mindset of the U.S. side is want to prove first to the domestic audience in the United States that democracy still works in the United States. The U.S. just passed the one year anniversary of the January 6th Congress riot turmoil. And at the same time, the U.S. want to prove to the international audience that the democracy also works worldwide. Actually, in the whole world, I think the number of the Democratic Party democratic country has decreased rather than increased in past decade. So the U.S. want to show to both domestic and international audience that democracy still works. And also US can solve the problem, like the US can build first-class infrastructure, though the two parties fight against each other in the Congress. And the US want to prove that it can develop its own new technology. Rather, though China invest a lot, then the US want to show that they can do the same thing. They can do even better than Chinese. they can invest, they can take action, they can be united. I think these are the mindset of the American side. So actually, I think this is evidence of weakness rather than strength. My last response is about the summit. I totally agree with Bonnie on this. I think the summit is extremely important. I mean, the meeting between the two leaders. I think because China-US relations are so complicated, and also the domestic political atmosphere in two capitals are too hostile to the other side. So we can only rely on our top leader to have a top-down process, try to navigate through this muddling water. I think this is very, very important. That being said, I think it's not adequate to have a presidential summit. I think we need a more ministerial level and maybe deputy vice ministerial level and other mid-level meetings to follow on. I'm a little bit disappointed after the November virtual meeting between the two presidents. I think I think that was a pretty good meeting, but we haven't seen a lot of concrete steps after that. I think we really need some concrete steps to implement, to accelerate to implement the consensus of the two presidents. So I hope that the two presidents can meet again in the first half of this year. But I think it's equally important to have other dialogues between Chinese and American officials. Sometimes we have in the Obama administration, we have a dialogue fatigue. We think that we have too many dialogues and it's too about protocol. It's not effective. But this kind of thing, this kind of dialogue is always not that effective, I think. Actually, I did some interview during when Obama was president. I did some interviews to the officials in the State Department and also in the Foreign Ministry here in Beijing. Actually, both sides, the officials, the diplomats on the two sides, both said that yes, it's so boring and talk about talking points, but both sides said we need this kind of mechanism to solve the stovepipe problem domestically and also to create a mechanism to dialogue.